In this video, we'll explore the distinction between the real and the illusion, and also in the process examine one of the reasons there's so much conflict within the illusion. It all begins with the one, the uninterrupted ecology, the whole, the sphere, all that is. And all that is real. It's also unconscious from a human perspective. When I say the words, all that is, there's a lot of space there. There's a lot of emptiness there. The mind does not rush in and imagine even a millionth of a millionth of a millionth of all that is. All that is, right? Everything, nothing, right? They're the same. There's not a lot of consciousness. When you start entering the delusion, the illusion, created by language, then we have consciousness. And that's why the conscious human is born in the knowledge of good and evil, the knowing of distinction, the knowing of words. Now we cut the one into two. We no longer have an uninterrupted ecology, an interconnected synergy. We no longer have reality. We now have the first illusion. The first illusion is that all that is cut into two pieces. And it's an illusion because you cannot cut all that is into two pieces, right? You cannot even cut a human into two pieces and have it remain a human. You cannot cut all that is. You cannot cut the planet, the ecology that is this earth, into two pieces and have it remain the earth. First of all, it's now two earths. And second of all, with the molten core spilling out, with the new orbit around the sun, one part banging into the other part, we certainly don't exist. And we're the only ones calling the earth, right? So if we don't exist, does the earth exist? Not by that name, right? Not in the framework of the illusion. Now, the other reason that this illusion of duality, and it's a useful delusion, it's a useful illusion, it makes language, it makes an observation, it gives birth to consciousness. Because now we've got one thing to compare to another thing. And then those two things can give birth to an infinite number of other things. You can now compare black to white, and in the middle, an infinite amount of color. So it's an illusion that gives birth to an infinite amount of human consciousness. Once you have two, you have an infinity of gradations between the two. Once you have black and white, you have infinite shades of gray, and you have infinite shades of color. You refract the black and the white through a prism, and a rainbow, an infinite dimension of color. Once you have two, you have an infinite amount of space. You take two poles, this pole and this pole. Now, this is the right pole, this is the left pole. But now you can divide this unit into an infinite amount of micro units, right? An inch, a centimeter, a millimeter, a trillimeter, a billimeter, right? You can divide a meter into as many units of space as you can imagine. And there's no end of imagination. A billionth of 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 a meter. And just keep going on down. And the same is true with time. Once you decide that this is 1 p.m. and this is 2 p.m., you can divide the hour into quarters, into halves, into eighths, into billionths. Now, you need a timepiece if you're going to dicker about whether it's this billionth of an hour or this billionth of an hour. You need a rhythm. You need to use a measuring device, an observing and measuring device that is faster than the unit of measurement, right? Because if you have a measuring device that only records seconds, you cannot articulate where you are in billionths of a second between 1 second and the next. But the question is any of this real? The fact that I invent a word called good and I invent a word called evil, is it real? Does it exist because it is named? You see, naming something, dividing something, is based on its difference. The supposition for having more than one word, because the only real word is one. 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 You say one, I say one, 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 one. That's reality. All things are interconnected. You can look at every level of the illusion. Let's go back to the moment of the Big Bang, when poof, out of nothing, comes everything. Well, we're all very close at that point, aren't we? The entire possibility field of the universe is existing in less than the size of a pea, in less than a millisecond. The entire possibility field of everything that has been over the last 20 or 30 billion years, and everything that will be over the next trillion years. Meaning, the universe is just getting started. And the endless amounts of time out on the horizon, we've no idea what we have no idea about as we get out 1 trillion years into what we've called the future. But we know we were all bedfellows. We know we were all less than a few millimeters apart at one time. The entirety of space-time, the entirety of human consciousness and human imagination all existed in less than the size of a pea. And in order to give birth to human consciousness, we give birth to polarity, duality. We descend from the one, from the whole, into the knowledge, into the awareness of good and evil, of polarity, of distinction. And from the two comes everything else. In the synergy, in the creativity, in the productivity of the two come everything else. All of the colors from black and white. All of space between up and down, between left and right. All of time between one moment and the next, whatever we demarcate and measure. And the units of measurement are language, mathematical language and verbal language. The unit of measurement, the knife that cuts the one into many, is words. All thought rests on the foundation of words. We can cut the one any way we want. We can make a grid. Just like an image, it can be divided into 6 pixels. It can be divided into 8,000 pixels. An 8K screen. We can divide the one any way we want, as crudely or as finely as we want, with language. But the language is not reality. The language is a symbol of reality. Table is not table. Table is a symbol for an energy pattern that I'm measuring in such a way as to see a table. When I question, does it have a flat surface? Does it have legs? Can it be used for eating or resting one's feet? When I look at that energy pattern through that lens, the lens of language, I see table. If I look at it in another way, I do not see table. If I look at it as a source of combustion, of fuel, I will see, yes, it is burnable, or no, it is not. That is steel and glass, not very good. That's wood, that's good, right? If I don't have the frame, the paradigm, the word, table, the idea table, the idea that something exists to serve the function of eating, then if someone says, have you seen a table? I don't even know what they're talking about. What's that? Well, it's a thing that's flat. What's that? Well, it's like kind of like this. Okay, and well, what about that lake over there? No, that's not a table. That's flat. But this is about so high and has legs like this. Here's some examples of tables. Oh, is that a table? Right? So a table comes into reality through language, through awareness. can you be aware of your shadow? Your light, your dark shadow, the repressed and denied parts of yourself. Can you be aware of your shadow without the word? What is shadow before there's the word shadow? What is it? Right? Now, of course, it can take any form. In Zulu, the word for shadow might be Ido, Kido, Vido. The symbol is random to a large extent. You say, I'm John. I say, I'm Johann. It's not the same symbol, right? But it's the general idea. But what about completely different symbols that have nothing to do with the other, like zik or didada? Two sounds converging on a similar pattern of energy. Two sounds converging on a pattern of energy that is described in a similar way. But what if it's not described in a similar way? What if this object is described as a place to receive the blessings of the earth? In one language, in one cult, and a table, a tableau, a table, in another cult. What if it's called the place that bows down on legs in another cult? The place that bows down. Or what if it's called the tree that rests on two legs in another language, right? The tree that rests on two legs. What if it's called the tormented log? It's poked by two sharp things that stick into it, the tormented log. Now, of course, all of these would be in different languages. Zabikwa, Hadia, Vumba, table. Referencing it from different points of view. But none of the sounds, none of the words are real. They're symbols for thoughts, for ideas that correlate with the cult that one is in. Now, you can break the one into many with words. This is a thumb. This is a forefinger. It's just not real. This is not a thumb without a forefinger, right? You see the connection there? At some point, the thumb integrates with the forefinger. Now, if you describe a thumb as something that moves like this, and you cut the thumb off, it's not a thumb. It doesn't move like that. If you describe a thumb as something with this pinky warm flesh, and you cut it off, and it goes cold and black, it's not a thumb. It's a severed, withered thumb, right? All things are interconnected. If shipping containers were not invented by a particular person decades ago, this pattern of energy called a necklace, which isn't lace, right? It's called a necklace, but it isn't even that. It's not lace. It's not even an accurate illusion. This necklace would not be on my body today. Someone invented and standardized shipping containers decades ago, and millions of human beings adopted them in a variety of ways. And so a lace that goes around the neck from Nepal finds its way at a price that is affordable due to the massive efficiencies of standardized shipping containers into a local shop, right? And so it's here. A moment in time touching decades and decades ago, touching millions of people. And all of those people could not exist without their ancestors and their ancestors and their ancestors. And none of it could exist without the planet Earth. And Earth couldn't exist without the sun, as Earth is defined. And the sun couldn't exist without the Big Bang. It couldn't exist without time. It couldn't exist without space. But these are just words. Every one of these grids is a word. It's an illusion of separation that pretends that one thing is different from another. It pretends that with definitions. Define. Cutting. This means this and this means this, says the knife that divides them. They're not divided in reality. Now, this map of language that we overlay on things is what we see, is what we think, is what we are aware of. We're not aware of reality, we're aware of the words that we use to describe reality. We are not aware of who we are aware of who we think we are through the lens of language. We are not aware of the self, the light that shines through the pattern. We are aware of the ego, the I, that identifies with a pattern of thinking, feeling, speaking, doing, and being that are framed in language, mathematical and verbal language. We're not aware of reality. We're aware of the symbols we've invented to represent crude patterns of reality. Our words are not real. They are symbols for what's real. Our thoughts are not real. They are symbols for words. They're created out of the illusionary symbol of words. You cannot think a single thought without words. Which means you cannot be aware of a single thing without the words to create the illusion of that thing. The words are an illusion that is used to create an illusion that cannot exist without the words. If you look at the image behind me, it is completely and utterly connected. Right? This leaf is connected to this leaf by this branch. This branch is connected to that branch. These all branches are connected to a trunk. There's no gap, there's no void between here and here. And we say this is ground, and this is air, and this is leaves, and this is more air. We say that, but there's no void in between it. This shrub can't exist without the space in which the shrub exists. It isn't even a shrub without words. If you give this image to an infant before language, they don't see the distinctions because there are no words through which to see them with. They don't say this is green, this is red, this is bulbous, this is pointy, there's no words to do any of that. And in that way, an infant is more connected with reality than we are. We are intimately connected with the symbols of reality, with the words we use to separate ourselves enough so that we can pretend to be observing something different from ourselves. The reality is that if this shrub did not exist, nothing would. This shrub is part of the possibility field. You do not get a probability field unless there is first a possibility field. Now, the possibility field collapses if you delete one of its expressions, right? You think of the possibility field of a watch. If you want to delete the hour 1 p.m., just take it out of existence altogether. How do you get from 12 to 2 p.m.? Through nothing. How do you get the hand to get to 2 p.m. when it vanishes, when it gets near 1 p.m., into nothingness? Because as soon as you can say this is the area that 1 p.m. used to exist, it's not nothing. It's a bunch of new words that's still holding the place. We do not relate to reality. We relate through human awareness to our symbols of reality. Our symbols of reality are based on the illusion that one energy is completely distinct from another energy, which is not the case. You are not a completely distinct human being that has nothing to do with your genetic heritage. It has nothing to do with the planet. It has nothing to do with the trees that give you air. You are a small part of an interconnected ecology. You cannot exist without it, and it cannot exist without you. The possibility field that you reside in collapses if you are taken out of all existence. Now, the possibility field holds the space for the body to deteriorate and become fertilizer, or to become ash and smoke, or to be eaten by animals. The possibility field holds all of your possible futures and all of your possible pasts. But it collapses if you cease to exist. If you are not possible, then the entire possibility field in which you exist collapses. If you take away one, right, in order to delete 1/1,000,000th of the sun, just stop it existing, or take a slice out of the earth, like a slice of pizza, 1/1,000,000th slice from the earth's core all the way out, and just turn it into nothing. The earth stops existing as it was. The possibility field is like a thread, a mathematical language that weaves from one thing to another. It's like a stitch in a woven sweater. If you cut out a hole, the entire sweater unravels. The rest of the pattern cannot hold its integrity. Every part of the pattern rests on every other part to one degree or another, directly or indirectly. Change the gravitational constant of this pinky, and you change the gravitational constant of the entire universe. Change the gravitational constant of the entire universe, and everything in the universe changes. All things are connected outside of the illusion of words. So we are relating to reality through the illusion of separateness, resting on the illusion of thought, resting on the foundation of words, which represent the illusion that you can take the one and cut it up into bits, and then give each bit a word. This bit is red. This bit is yellow. This bit is green. This bit is darker green. This bit is brown. The illusion is that those are separate things. The illusion is that you can get a shade of gray without black, or that the entire continuum of grays doesn't have to exist in order for one shade to exist nested within that continuum. We rest on the illusion, we rest upon the illusion of language that calls this a distinct color from this, on an endless continuum of color that is interconnected, that stops existing if the final illusion is relinquished, which is the illusion that what we see is independent of the observing and measuring devices through which we view it. That reality is even if no one has eyes. And everyone has not only an ear, but a veer. A veer is an observing and measuring device that measures the right angles in a space. It doesn't see color and it looks for right angles. It says there's 380 right angles in my vista. That's a veer. Reality is suddenly very different because the observing and measuring device through which we're looking at it is different. If we look at reality through a microscope, we see a completely different world than when we look at reality through our eyes. Reality changes in accordance with the observing and measuring devices we use to observe it. So is our reality real? It's real to us, but is it real? Or is it an illusion? We cannot fully touch reality. We can hint at it, get tastes of it, but we cannot fully touch reality within the domain of language, within our observing and measuring devices that separate one thing from another. We live in an illusion of distinction, in an illusion of separation, where everything is separate from everything else. Every atom is separate from every other atom, when in fact, it is all one. It is all an ecology. It is all a dance. There is no middle, beginning, and end. There is only one. There is no forward and backwards. There's only one. There is no black and white. There's only one possibility field that contains the possibility of creating illusions called language and illusions called human consciousness that can pretend that this shade of gray is completely distinct from its brother, from the next shade of gray on the endless continuum. Let's take it seriously enough to learn, to understand, to explore our relationship, our relay of energy between what is and what is, between one and one. Let's take it seriously enough to explore, but not so seriously that we believe, that we attach in desperation and fear as the I that identifies with a given symbol, with a given language. This is the word of God and not that. This is who God is and not that. This is black and not white. This is better than that. It's all a grid. And every cult of the more than 10,000 cults in human history have divided the one into pieces in different ways. Some have divided them like this. Some have ignored entire regions of the psyche and developed just one part. Some have formed battles between the right side and the left side. It's not a battle you can win when it's all part and parcel of one. If you pull with the left arm and the right arm, can you really win?